For those of you watching, welcome back to the Unmasking Motherhood podcast. I can't wait for you to get to know my guest, Ilona, here today. We both live in Las Vegas, and we actually haven't officially met in person yet, but I had heard about Ilona through two women that I love dearly, a good friend and my midwife, Cassie, who was on a previous episode. And as they told me more about just her heart, her work in the world, and also being a fellow mother, I was like, I really want to have this woman on. So it's really exciting to have you here today.
Such an honor to be here. Thank you.
You're welcome. So, as you know, or maybe you don't because you haven't seen the podcast before, the podcast Unmasking Motherhood is all about shining a light on a woman's journey, her story, taking us from what we see on the outside and pulling back that layer in order to get to know a woman for her heart, the deep, the messy. And if you're a mom, you know that it is a journey full of highs and lows and everything in between. So I'm so honored to have another woman who's willing to just share her story with you. It's kind of a big deal. And I hope that you see yourself or a good friend or your mother in her feel less alone and just more connected, knowing that you can do hard things, that mothering matters, and it's the most important job in the world, in my opinion. So, without further ado, let's jump into the first round of discussions about, as we all know, we start with the mask. So, Alana, when it comes to your story, I would love to hear about kind of like your upbringing. Just give us like a brief rundown, a brief flow of like your background. And if you want to share, feel comfortable sharing about your family of origin, socioeconomic background, if you had a religious upbringing, and kind of catch us up to present day as if it's someone like kind of watching that like saw your story but doesn't know all the deep nitty gritty details. So just keeping it more like bird's eye view, if that makes sense.
Well, I'm originally from Ukraine, born and raised there, and um, at um, 19 years of old, I moved from Ukraine to United States. It was a complete unplanned move because I was just here for the summer and fell in love with
Oh.
United States, fell in love with the amount of opportunities and the quality of life. And the biggest thing I should say was when I was here for the first 2 weeks, I remember being myself at the store. It was in Texas, San Antonio, where my
Okay.
program was for 3 months. And uh, people I remember were just so nice, and they were walking by and saying, "Excuse me," and "Pardon me," and I was like, "Oh
Yeah.
my God, I feel so seen. I feel so honored. I don't even know these people because the cultural difference was such a big difference, and I think people in Texas are really nice as well."
Mhm.
For the most part, in the United States, the culture here was a really big culture shock, but in a good way at first when I moved here. And yeah, and then I moved to Las Vegas and been here ever since. And as far as childhood, I know you asked if there was anything that I think would be of value.
Mhm.
Since we are talking about motherhood, what would be of value to share to other moms listening and other women listening, that I grew up without a mother myself. So the motherhood journey was actually pretty intense for me when I became a mother myself, um, mothering without a mother. So um, that has been a pivotal experience in my life, and I um, love connecting with other women. And my biggest intention with sharing any of my story would be that no other woman feels alone on her journey, just like what you shared. And I love that we connect on that level because it can be
Yes.
quite lonely because not everybody talks about it. the things that are not pretty or hard or maybe not very commonly shared.
Absolutely. We need more of it. We need more. It's like whenever you light a candle and like one woman shares their story or is vulnerable, and like you light another woman's candle, and it like creates liberation and freedom through our shared experience, you know? If you're comfortable with sharing, you mentioned, so I have two questions for you, like how different like Texas was, your first experience culturally. What was it like growing up in Ukraine? I've never been there. So if you're open to talking about like culturally just what it's like there. And also I'm curious like who raised you? Who raised you?
Yeah, so I'll answer that question first.
Yep.
Uh, my grandma raised me. My mom passed away when I was 4, and
Mm,
my dad has been battling ever since. He's still around, still alive, but still battling his addiction with heroin. And my grandma, my father's mom, was my guardian. So when I was growing up, she was like my mom. So she did everything a mom would. And I didn't know any better. With kids, I didn't know any better until I became a mom, I should say. So I felt like I always had everything I wanted from my from my experience as a child. But what was it like growing up in Ukraine? I think the biggest difference is it's a third world country. So a lot of conveniences that we take for granted, for example, AC in every unit, every apartment, whether it's Texas, Las Vegas, or New York, you have ACs everywhere built in. So in Ukraine, that is a luxury, not a necessity.
mm,
So, and the biggest difference in the cultural class is that Ukraine doesn't have that much of a middle class like United States does. So it's more you either really, really poor or you crazy, stupid, rich.
wow. Wow.
Yes. So
One extreme or the other.
there's not that much of a middle class
Mm,
as it is in United States. And um, growing up with the um, with just in that culture was quite different than what I see here. And I've been here for what 12 years now, so it's a little bit um, fading away since don't I don't live there anymore. So every time I go there, I'm reminded of those things. But the biggest thing is the mentality, just the attitude, I would say. The attitude wherever you're going is different. And people are more positive and happy, I would say, in United States in comparison with Ukraine.
okay.
And another big difference in mentality that is my favorite to share, probably, that in Ukraine, most of us are very, it's a cultural thing, we're very blunt and very straightforward. So the something that something that really differentiates the culture that here it is. At first, when I came here, and I remember a lot of times it was a cultural shock at first when you were just um, not understanding why people are being so nice to you,
Mhm.
and in fact, they might not really like you. So in Ukraine, if
Uh-huh.
we don't like you, we want to go out of the way to make sure we like you, and then in fact,
Yeah.
which I appreciate, and I've learned to uh, I've learned to embrace that aspect and use it to my advantage. And I feel like there is a big aspect of this cultural difference that I really appreciate too, because not everything has to be straightforward and harsh. So I love the culture, really, American culture actually really softened me in that way that you can deliver the same message and you can um, have the same impact with the message without necessarily risking hurting somebody's feelings. And
Hmm.
that's what I really, really appreciate about the mentality that uh, I was able to adjust to now.
Yes, yes. Thank you for taking us through a little bit of your backstory and sharing about your childhood too. So, along those same lines, just still getting to know you a little bit more, but from the outside, like, okay, this is a little bit about Ilona. If someone was to be following you around present day, this might sound a little creepy, but if someone was to like watch you from the outside and observe you, what would they think about your personality, your life as an outsider that doesn't know you? What would they be like? She's da 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 da. Like,
Wow, that is a really good question. I love it. Oh, how would I answer that? Somebody just follows me throughout the day.
yeah, like to be like, she's got a wonderful life or she's a hot mess. Like, if they're just watching you, like personality or life, like,
I think the biggest thing that comes up for me as I hear that is that I'm very organized. Like I'm going to be, uh, if I have something going on, I'm making sure that happens. I'm pretty organized. I rarely forget certain things.
mm-hmm.
That comes probably from being growing up a little bit too fast. You know, I started living by myself when I was 15 years old. So I had to do um, a lot of caretaking for myself. So not expecting things from outside world. So which requires a lot of responsibility. So that's the second thing comes up that you would, if you see my day, it's very, I'm a routine person. So most likely you will see me doing very similar things every
Yeah.
day. I love my morning routine, which I can share if it's of value. But I love having
Yeah.
my morning routine.
What is it? Tell us.
Well, most importantly, what I've learned from years of being having to work 2 or 3 jobs to provide for myself early on when I moved here as an immigrant, um, that was very stressful, and that put a lot of um, stress on my system. And
Mm.
as I've been healing my nervous system from the busyness of the stress, what I found because I was trying to meditate for years. And that a lot of times would give me the opposite effect that would give me anxiety because when you already wake up with anxiety, so knowing that that's from my own journey, from my own discoveries and studies that I've done, that I've learned that when you wake up first thing in the morning, your cortisol is the highest. It doesn't matter, even if you're waking up and you're just having a good day, you're not having any stressful thoughts or no stressful situations ahead. Our body has the highest amount of cortisol first thing in the morning, in the first hour.
So
So
interesting. I had no idea.
yeah, and knowing that gives us permission to not be hard on ourselves when we're sitting down and we're trying to meditate and we're just having these thoughts. Oh,
Yep.
what am I going to do? Am I going to be on time for this appointment? How am I going to squeeze all these things in for my kid and then do this?
Yeah.
So that gives us more grace. So what I've learned is that doing breath work before meditation
Mm.
creates your system and allows me to go deeper into my meditation. So my routine became breath work, 10-15 minutes. Sometimes when I have more time, I will do 20 minutes. And after that delicious, getting yourself into that delicious state, I drop into my meditation. And at times I would journal when I feel like I want to journal rather than do meditation. But breath work is mostly the first thing I do first thing in the morning. And then I love reading. So
Mm.
if I wake up enough time before my son, I usually do usually that happens, but sometimes he just wants to sit next to me. And now he actually learned, and he just sits next to me when I'm reading my book for just those 5 minutes or so.
Oh,
Yeah.
he's
Um,
sit with you. But like
yeah.
honors doesn't try to interrupt it. It's like, okay, you can come.
And he's like, "Are you done? Can you play with me?" And I always tell him, I'll be done here in 2 minutes. Or if I'm doing, sometimes he even jumps in or wakes up when I'm in the middle of my breath work. and it's mind blowing. He just lays down next to me and waits until I'm done. And then, hi, good morning. We say good morning. And I think
Yeah.
it's important. Before I used to feel so guilty for it, but now I've learned that it's so important to model the self-care, because kids do what we do, not what we say. And at the end of the day, I know I'm going to be a better mom when I do my morning routine, and I'm going to feel more centered and more resource. I'm going to more resource to handle whatever comes my way with my clients, with my son, with any other life situations. So you would see that that happens probably 99% of the time. I have the same morning routine. And then,
Beautiful. I was just saying beautiful. Sorry to interrupt you.
yes, and so you would see that I'm regimented and uh,
Mhm.
love my routine. And you would also see that I love my space as much as I love people. I'm a projector by human design, so I love being with people, but I also need some time to myself. So those are the three things that you will see um, on a regular basis if you don't know me and if you just follow my day.
Yep. Yep. And they would see that your mom, which I totally wanted to have you tell us, how many babes do you have? How old?
Yeah. So my son is almost 5. He'll be 5 in December, and I only have one child. So
Amazing.
um,
Okay, so I have a question for you about motherhood. Um, when you got pregnant, were you planning to get pregnant? Um, and what were your thoughts about motherhood before becoming a mom? So I know two different questions, but was it part of the plan? And what were your thoughts about motherhood?
yeah, that's a good question. Um, well, I was not attached to being a mother because there was that fear, subconscious fear, will I be a good enough mother without actually having a mother,
Mm,
without knowing what mother is like. And I was not attached. I was like, there's so much stuff I want to do in this world, and I know I can contribute. I can maybe adopt. There's so many kids that are already born and that want that love and need that love that we can give them. So I was completely leaving up to God, up to spirit, universe, whatever meant to happen. And um, then I met my son's father, and we're not together now for the context for the listeners. But it all played out exactly how it's supposed to from that union. How beautiful, beautiful son, and that I wouldn't trade for anything. In fact, I think where I am today is because of that relationship and the impact it had, and me having my son as a result of that relationship. So when I actually, the story with his dad was actually that it was, we were madly in love, and it was a beautiful, beautiful story. And when I did fall pregnant, I didn't think I can, because I
oh,
was vegan for about a few years before that, and I kept losing my period because
oh, okay.
I exercising too much, little eating too little of what I needed. In fact, I ate a lot, but just not enough nutritionally, I guess. So my period was not very consistent. Sometimes, like there was a time when I lost it for 6 months. So I didn't really think I can get pregnant. So my son was a blessing for us, out
Yeah,
of,
I'd say so.
yeah, out of nowhere. However, that's the direction where we were going. I was open to having children and family. We just bought our place at that time. And a few weeks later I got pregnant. So
Mm.
and when he was born, actually, and during, I don't know, do you want me to pause there? During pregnancy, did you
No,
ask
go
me?
on. Go on, go on. Yeah.
Yeah, so with the to wrap this up, is when he was born. That's where my biggest initiation, I feel, that happened, like it happens for a lot of us, that I wish we talked more about, because my biggest frustration, I remember being, I had a few friends that had children, and I was like, why didn't you tell me that this is what's going to happen? That it
Yeah.
just such a positive. and only positive mask on motherhood,
Yeah.
I may, in the context of this podcast, that I had no idea that there could be a really dark side
Mm-hmm.
to what happens to us if we have unresolved things. And I think that would have helped me, and I know it would help a lot of women that are about to be mothers or new mothers if they're going through rough patches, that it's completely normal if you experience a dark night of the soul right now. And if you're a new mom, it's so normal, and it's nothing to be ashamed of.
Yeah. Thank you for opening that message. I feel like we can't talk about that specifically enough. I know some of the women that are going to watch this have not yet had children. And so the more we can like spread the word about this right here and normalize it or speak to maybe it's not everyone's experience. I don't know how it couldn't be, but maybe it everyone is affected a little bit differently depending on their circumstances. But for women who did go through that and have never talked about it or felt really crazy or really struggled to hear, about it from you, could make them feel like, oh, okay, like this is felt by another person. And so you unintentionally like kind of segued us, but I really am curious, as we pull back the mask, what is it that you wish your mom friends would have told you that you didn't know and that really shocked you when you became a mom?
Um, I think I'll answer it this by sharing a story that has been really impactful for me. I remember feeling for the first time like I'm doing something wrong and there's something wrong with me, and started being really ashamed of my journey and how I'm feeling when I was in the midst of, this is for the context, when my son was born. It was really, I didn't realize how traumatic it would be for me to say the word mom because I never had to use it. And I kept using it, come to mommy. And I didn't realize it at that time, that I was going through grieving, not having a mother, not being able to call a mom. And my grandma that raised me, she's still around, but
Oh,
she's today, she's 88 years old. So at that time she was in her early 80s, like 83 years old. But it's not the same because she's so far away. And also not being able to, um, just not having enough support, lack of support, and that village and that circle that I realized that so crucial for us as mothers to have, because we're not men. Back in the day, we were all tribal. We lived in, when we would come back, we wouldn't come back home from the hospital back in the day, but when we give birth, we would have at least few other moms that just either given birth or about to give birth. So if you are tired, another mother would breastfeed your kid.
mhm,
Or if you are tired, there is like 25 other people to
yeah.
hold that kid, entertain that. So we will, and
Mhm.
now our system goes into survival when we get home. And if there's not enough support, let's say your husband has to work and you're by yourself, you don't know what to do, and you're just by yourself, your system immediately goes into that survival.
Yeah.
And that's what I wish a lot of people knew coming into motherhood and had that village. Because I see, you probably know the proof for yourself. You know, mothers that handled their transition into motherhood so much different than you, or
Yeah.
somebody who struggled. um, if you look at their lives, they probably had a lot of support and a lot of things that would contribute to their them not feeling alone. So a lot of things were taken care of or delegated. So the story, it's a very short story. I just remember being at the park with one of my friends, and she um, had her son, and they were just few weeks apart with my son. And I remember asking her, what is your biggest struggle with right now where you're at as a mother? I just wanted to relate. I was, I didn't know how
Yeah.
to say and be vulnerable that, hey, I'm really,
Mhm.
really like not having a good time with this. And I didn't even know how to talk about these things back then.
Yeah.
And she said, oh, uh, what struggles are you talking about? No, I didn't have any struggles, just obstacles. And I was like, wow. And I felt, it's my own, I take full responsibility. But at that time, I, my interpretation of that was, which might be not exactly what she was saying, but that was her experience because she had a mom. She also has been around kids. Her sister just had 3 kids. So she's been around kids all the time,
Yeah.
knows what to do. And I haven't been around kids for 15 years since I moved here. So I don't know what to do with little kids.
Right.
And, like that's just for the context.
Right.
It's me processing it now, sharing it now. But then it seemed like, oh my gosh, I must be doing something wrong.
Mm-hmm.
Everything is a struggle. Everything feels like I am falling short. So,
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Oh, that you bring up an interesting part of it. Though I had friends with kids or was around it in different communities, like I really wasn't immersed around young children either. And so when I became a mom too, I mean, I had just no context for how to do things, what was normal. And so it felt like I was like, what's it called when you're, oh, treading water. I was like treading water, trying to figure it out, like judging it. People tell me I was doing great, but I was like, I feel like a disaster. I didn't know what I didn't know. But I think that so much of there's so many reasons those first 6 months to a year, all of it on and off can be really challenging. But for a woman that's around nieces and nephews or babysits and kind of just has that idea of like what it's like with child development and everything and the postpartum period, it can really make a difference in your early stages, even though it's still hard. Yeah, I just didn't
yeah,
know.
yeah.
Yeah. I wanted to ask you, what was your birth experience like? What stands out to you about your birth experience?
I think it's also part of why it was so traumatic because I think I had the birth trauma with my son too, how he came into the world and
Mm,
the things that transpired. Um, I did give birth naturally, meaning not via C-section. However, he was an OP baby, so he was coming up with his face up, now face down. So I had to push for 3 hours.
fun.
And they gave me an option whether we do either vacuum or C-section, and I chose vacuum because I wanted to avoid C-section at all cost, and it worked right away. And vacuum is not as scary as it sounds. It's just a little suction cup to support him to get through the bone where he wasn't able to
Yeah.
uh, get himself. And he was also a 9 pound baby. He was 9 pounds, 1 pound less.
Big boy.
And I had no idea too how big he was.
Yeah.
Maybe that's what
Uh-huh.
I was thinking and seeing and working with a lot of moms over these years, seeing babies at that age when they're few weeks old. My son was already 12 pounds by the month one. Was a big baby. So everything was physically harder. Thank goodness I worked out my whole life.
It's a big boy, yeah.
But it still was hard on my body.
Hmm.
But that whole experience was I remember going straight into survival, like everything was just activated. But now knowing everything I know about nervous system, what I really think that happened, and I know it didn't just happen to me, but happens for a lot of women, is when our system is already operating from uh, the hormones of adrenaline and cortisol, if you were stressed during pregnancy or if there is something going on maybe in your relationship or you might just, or another common reason, you might just have some unprocessed trauma that is lingering in your body and you haven't been in touch with it. You add more stress on it, your cup overflows. So I think that's what happened for me personally, is that birth experience was just like a massive amount of stress, and on top of just normal regular stress that we experience becoming mothers, and not having the um, support system that I needed at that time, that village, that circle.
Yep,
I think that's what made the experience that that it was.
totally. Yeah. I thought of you the other day, knowing how much you care about like nervous system balancing and nervous system health. I received an email from Ruthie Lindsay. She's someone on Instagram, and it said something along the lines of the emotions that we sweep under the rug, the emotions we sweep under the rug, we sweep right into our nervous system. The ones that we ignore, we don't pay, we're like, oh, it's fine, or don't know how to be with, they go somewhere. They don't just exit and never come back. And I was like, ooh, yeah. And there's so many emotions that we can name and not name, that we not be aware of, right? Leading up to birth, during birth, and postpartum. And you said something that I really related to, especially as a first time mom. Second time around, I had more words for it and better support because I knew what I knew finally. But I did not even know how badly I was struggling. I didn't even know the words for it. I was so overcome with love and the beauty of the baby that I was like, I'm fine, I'm fine. But looking back, it's like, I don't think I knew how overwhelmed and how much of a fog I was in, which I think is pretty normal for lack of sleep, hormonal change, big bodily change, relationship change with your partners, all the things. But I wish that we could give moms like a better vocabulary for emotionally how they're doing, um, in postpartum so they could be with it and just like let it out. I remember my best friend just saying, if you need to cry, just cry. Just go in the shower and just let it all out. And I was like, okay, I'll be fine. And then like a weekend, I was like, ah, like, but I still didn't know how to talk about it. It's just, I don't know.
And when we, that's completely normal. I was working with bodies all these years as a personal trainer and knew so much about the body, but in the same time, I was really disconnected from my body in the sense of emotions, in
Yeah.
the and my nervous system. So um, with us not being able to put things in words, it all stems from uh, we first need to be modeled that when we're little, and when we're little, what usually happens in the previous generations, that oh, if a girl cries, what is it? If a girl is like having tantrums all the time, she's too much.
Yeah.
The boy cries, or don't be a girl, like
He's
you be
weak. Yeah.
strong. Yeah,
Yep.
you gotta be strong. So it's not to villainize our parents ever. It's more to bring awareness to how it's been and what shaped us.
Yeah.
So now we can have, because it's never too late to repattern and heal your nervous system from what you've experienced. And it's never too late to embody the wholeness of who you are, because by rejecting the emotions, we reject parts of ourselves, because emotions are just energy in motion. And that energy doesn't just disappear. If you familiar with the uh, quantum physics, it's science. It doesn't go anywhere. The energy does not go anywhere. It has to. It doesn't just disappear. You cannot create it or destroy it. You cannot create it or destroy it. It just it has to be transmuted into something else. And
Mhm.
now we have more studies, more research, and it's becoming more accessible to the mass that the emotions actually last about 90 seconds. Any emotion actually lasts about 90 seconds. So us feeling it is freeing it, because anything we are not allowing ourselves to feel, we get stuck with.
Mhm.
If it's a sadness, if it is anger, we just get stuck with it. and it leaks out in different ways, or it
Wow.
manifests as a physical symptom or
Hmm.
mental or psychological symptom like anxiety, very, very common, postpartum anxiety, because we got to hold together for the kid instead of knowing that it's safe to express our feelings and doing our own work while holding space for our little ones too, which is so, so important. So if you're a mom and listening to this, I would add, if you feel like you need support around your emotions, your mental health, and if you need another permission, this is your permission to go get it and to um, put yourself first, because the quality of your parenting is going to be significantly impacted by the quality of care that you receive. And I'm not just talking about massages and bubble bath, but the quality of your presence, the quality of your mental state, because you can physically be there but completely checked out, or you can be there and be resentful, or you can be there and not be attuned as a parent. And usually the degree to which we can attune is a reflection to another, is a reflection of a degree of our attunement with ourselves.
Mm.
So if that serves as a permission, I can't stress that enough, that your life will be so much easier if you're a mom listening to it and wanting support or uh, care or figuring something out for yourself that feels heavy. You don't have to postpone it until the kids get older, because
Mm-hmm.
be such a better parent.
Absolutely. You just touched on so many like really key things. I wondered if for the mom listening, the woman listening, maybe she's pregnant and hasn't even had babies yet, but or a mama, if she's like, I really am drawn to what you're talking about, like where do I get started? Do you have a few ideas that you could share of like how they can enter into doing some nervous system healing or easy accessible places to start?
Yeah. And there's no right or wrong way to start. And I love this question. So thank you for asking. And journey for you will be different than the journey.
Sure.
So
Hmm.
it depends where you're at. But the first step is always to start building the relationship with your emotions. And by relationship with your emotions, um, I mean is that realization that every emotion is a powerful messenger, and every emotion is so valuable and needed, uh, that there is no right or wrong emotions. There is no right or wrong expressions or good or bad expressions, because that anger that we don't want to feel is actually, on the other side of it, is sadness. On the other side of sadness, the depth of sadness that we can allow ourselves to feel will also determine the depth of joy and happiness that we can tap into. Because by cutting out one edge of emotions, we are cutting out the spectrum of all the good feelings that we can have. So I would say educating yourself on the nervous system. There's a lot of great books that would be of service. I can list a few. Um, that Body Keeps the Score, a really good book to start with, or the work of Peter Levine,
Mm.
and just general education about emotions, because 80% of our body, there's so much focus has been in the past years on mindset work.
Yeah.
So really familiar with mindset work as
Hmm.
a society. And now the somatic work, soma means body. So now somatic work is becoming very popular because there is more studies that are long term, that we realize that 80% of the information that we are receiving is actually not from our mind, it's from our body. and only 20% of the information is from our head. So it's that uh,
Hmm.
not the top down approach, but bottom up.
Wow.
So whatever we're ignoring on the body level, we're ignoring huge parts of who we are. And that translates into the life we live. It translates in how we feel on a daily basis. So I would say the first step would be to, if you're curious about uh, learning and expanding your somatic awareness, is to first learn and get even familiar with the idea that, oh, everything I'm feeling is normal.
Mm.
Everything is here to teach me something. Everything is here to serve me, because all these parts are very, very important to us and they hold valuable messages. So when we ignore them, we start being disconnected from our wholeness. So that's where we start feeling not enough, or not, we're playing small in life, holding ourselves back and not sharing our gifts. And it impacts how we show up in our relationships as well. So
Mm. I just, as you're talking, thank you for sharing all of this. I can't help but just see like such a powerful connection between our relationship with our emotions and our relationship ultimately with ourself, like the health we feel in our relationship with ourselves. And there's always something that we'll pass on to our children as they grow up that they're going to need to unlearn or heal from, right? No perfect parents here. But I can't help but see and just be inspired by like what you're talking about being a really important responsibility of ours now that we have this knowledge and all the studies coming out of like moms, we have got to heal and change the relationship we have with our emotions because we can say to our children, it's okay to be angry, but if they see us like really fighting with their anger, unable to like be with our emotions or unable to even have them like show emotions at all, they're going to pick that up. And I would love, I mean, this feels like a huge dream, but like for the next generation or like two generations from now, to not have to do all this learning that we are, to be like, it's okay to be angry. Like, wouldn't it be awesome if our future granddaughters or grandsons could be like, yeah, that's just part of life. Like, I'm cool with me in that respect. Like, there'll be other stuff they have to worry about, but to
yeah.
be good with their own emotions and to love and accept them, that would
Yeah.
be huge, huge.
Yeah. And especially with anger, I would like to
Yeah.
say, I feel like that mom's rage is very common, and something that a lot of moms don't feel comfortable talking about. And I've experienced that myself, so I wouldn't, this will be for me vulnerable to share, but I remember feeling that and not knowing what to do with it.
Mm-hmm.
Now, knowing what I know now, which is there is so much stigma about anger that um, we don't want to feel it, because anger, a lot of times, when we saw somebody angry, it led to violence. And it's not
Oh,
acceptable in society to be violent, which is completely beautiful, which is
yeah.
anger and violence don't have to go hand in hand.
Mm.
That's where the somatic experience comes in place, that when we realize that anger as an emotion is just as powerful as joy and sadness or anxiety, that is like, oh, you're anxious about this event that you're having, or you're anxious about your baby's birthday because there's going to be, I don't know, mother-in-law, and you don't know how to deal with her. It's completely normal. It's giving you some signals. And with anger, what I wish I knew when I needed it, then that I just can't stop sharing enough about, is that anger as an emotion is completely acceptable.
Mm.
It just, we are not taught how to feel it in our body because it's so powerful. It's when you think about being angry, if you think of the last time you felt it, you probably felt like you can do a lot of things. You
It's
probably felt
intense. Yeah.
extremely powerful.
Mm.
So the key with working with anger is the realization, and the key with accepting your own anger is as an emotion is completely welcome as a sensation in your body. Violence, however, is not acceptable. What you do with that anger is usually because that we go to violence because we don't know how to hold and have the capacity, because we most of the time have been really shamed for it when we're little. When
Yeah.
we're mad, we're either punished or shamed, or we saw some really violent expressions of anger when we were growing up, either our parents, caretakers, or maybe down the line some situations we've seen and we just decided I'm never going to be like them.
Yeah. Right.
And shut down, and then we have that energy leaking out either in our system and our organs and we get sick, or it translates as a constant irritability. I'm just constantly, everything is triggering me, everything is getting to me, and everybody is like really mean things, when in fact I am the one who is projecting that onto everything else, because there is so much that wants to be resolved.
Yeah. Thank you for speaking to anger and sharing vulnerably about mom rage. I didn't even know it was a thing until maybe a year after I had my son, and I was like, "Oh, this is normal." It was another one of those moments where like, I didn't know that this was a thing. Um, and so I'm grateful just to continue to name that. And I'm wondering, you had mentioned how emotions live in our body for around 90 seconds, right? They can move through our system, right?
Yeah,
On
yeah.
those lines. Is there a practice that you would recommend where someone they're like, I'm irritable or frustrated, which are forms of anger, that they could try out in that moment to just be with it, ride that wave versus verbally or physically reacting? Any recommendations?
Yeah, and there's a few things I hear in that question that I want to touch on. The first one is it takes about around 90 seconds to feel the emotion. So no matter how deep the emotion is, it takes around 90 seconds if we're fully allowing ourselves. So,
Mm,
for example, in my coaching practice, if I am in a session with a client and I see my client is going longer than 90 seconds, that is a feedback that they're staying in the story
uh,
about the feeling instead of somatically feeling the sensation, which is it takes some practice to allow ourselves to drop in, to not go in our head, because a lot of times what we do when we're not familiar with these feelings, we just want to unconsciously, we just jump out into our mind and we keep looping in the story.
yeah.
And that is the subtle way avoiding actually feeling it. And when we really slow down the story and feel it as a sensation, it moves through us. So usually when that happens, it's something for listeners is when you find yourself feeling a certain feeling longer than 90 seconds, that's the feedback that you're most likely overthinking about it. That's most likely you're not fully allowing yourself to drop in to body sensations.
Mm,
And the first step to dropping into your body is to and how to work particularly with anger is to have an awareness that that's what's happening. Oh, I feel mad. Oh, I feel pretty pissed right now. And a lot of times we go straight to reaction because that awareness aspect hasn't been practiced enough.
mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And usually, what I mean by awareness is that if we spend our whole day being busy, being going from thing to thing, when we don't spend enough time or we don't give ourselves time out of the day to just be, and we're on autopilot,
Yeah.
there's very little chance that we have very high levels of awareness of what's happening for us. So that is why people are trying to change this, and they're thinking positive thoughts and trying to change their thoughts. And it's like putting a band-aid on the wound that is rotten. It might look cool on the in the moment, but then you're gonna end up with a much bigger wound,
Yeah.
not really healing it. So the
Mm.
next step is to cultivate more awareness, is to spend time with yourself outside of doing stuff for others and just doing mode,
Yeah.
is what it can look like, either meditation or breathwork practice, or just simply giving yourself space throughout the day in between activities. Like right now, you going to end this podcast at some point.
Yeah.
It looks like having a moment to just be without changing anything, even if there is an appointment afterwards. Like for me, if I have an appointment, back-to-back appointments with clients, or just back-to-back appointments, I don't usually do that, but if sometimes I have to, I allow myself to just sit, even if it's just a minute in between activities, to be present, to continue cultivating this space where I can observe my mind instead of being consumed by my mind. Because if we never question our mind, we're going to believe everything it tells us. So in that moment when we are really mad and pissed, it tells us, oh, it's so automatic. And you go and you're like, oh, you're yelling at your kid. And then you're like, oh my gosh, I just sort of hit that. And then it's a cycle.
Mm-hmm.
And we're trying to, I would do it with affirmations or some surface work, and it doesn't work, because the main thing is you gotta slow it down, you gotta slow down what's happening for us to even be able to catch yourself in that moment. That is the first thing, because if you're able to catch yourself, oh, I'm pretty pissed right now, and what am I feeling? The next question is, when you were able to catch yourself, oh, I feel pissed, or I feel angry right now. The next question to ask yourself is, what am I feeling? Where am I feeling this? I'm feeling, and located in your body. Most likely it will be either throat, chest, or your belly.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Those sort of core stuff. And to get familiar with the sensation. Can I be with this right now?
Mm-hmm.
Can I allow myself to just be here for a moment, to whatever degree I feel comfortable, just being right there. And a lot of times people suggest to add breath to that, because yes, breath is always going to, the reason why we're pissed is probably because our mind went to future, because oh, the kid is going to hurt himself or something is going to happen, or because the mind went in the past, and something got triggered, like our past hurt or somebody said something and we got angry. So usually why breath is recommended, bring awareness to your breath, because breath brings you back to this present moment.
Mm.
You can't breathe in the future.
Nope.
You
Only
can think
right
about the future,
now. We do
right?
that enough. Yeah, we need to be right.
Cannot, yeah. You also cannot breathe in the past. You can think about the past,
Mm-hmm.
but breath is something that only happens now. There is never going to be another breath we take um, like this. So just anchoring yourself in that moment and asking yourself, what am I feeling? Can I be with this sensation without the story? And
Mm.
then you can have a different response, and you can dive into what exactly transpired and use it as a gift for and an opportunity for growth, because
Oh
everything that
yeah.
triggering us is usually there to grow us, if we choose to view it that way. But in that moment, in a nutshell, is to get present first, to what's happening, to be able to identify, oh, this actually got me. I'm feeling
Mm.
really activated right now. Where do I feel it in my body?
Yeah.
And can I be with it by bringing your breath to that sensation where you feel it?
Yeah. And you're saying that by doing that we might actually notice a shift 90 seconds later. If we're able to let go of the story, just be present, name the emotion, feel the emotion where it is, and then it will go away. Like
If
it'll pass.
we allow ourselves to fully feel, a lot of times there is stories that come with it or past event will be
Yep.
triggered. And I actually had that moment happen yesterday for the first time in a very long time, and with my son. And I went unconscious for a moment too.
Mm.
And I noticed myself going unconscious and how fast. So the thing is, what I want for listeners, you will never be this perfect person that is never triggered. If you ever meet somebody that tells you, I've mastered life and I never get triggered, like run, because they're not being authentic.
Yeah.
What happens is you can clear your triggers, absolutely. You can do a lot of work on clearing out your inner world to the point where you know how to work with everything. But there's always room for improvement. Always going to be little things that you might not have been aware of that pop up. And what this journey looks like, what healing and transformation looks like, I'm a big believer that healing and transformation is a changed behavior, is what you do when that happens. So, and how long you stay there. So you'll be able to, when, for example, for me yesterday, when that happened with my son for the first time in a very long time, I was like, wow, man, that really got me. I got to work on some really deep core material, and I'm extremely grateful for that gift of that trigger that happened, because I got to meet the part of me that I haven't been able to connect to ever.
Mm.
And uh, how long you stay there changes too. So you feel like you're able to shift faster and you're not ruminating in it. It doesn't affect your day.
Yeah.
You don't talk to 25 girlfriends about it. You don't
Yeah.
therapy sessions about it. You're like, oh, and you have the tools and you work through it, and it becomes a learning experience that doesn't consume you.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So, and to speak to something that you shared too, anger, a lot of times anger needs to be expressed fully, somatically. And it can be in the form of, it can be vocal. Some people are more physical, they want to move, um, or saying things out loud. And there are different techniques you can release anger somatically, because that is an important part too. Sometimes it's not vocal, sometimes it wants to be moved physically. Um,
Mm-hmm.
so knowing the techniques and tools for when that comes, when you feel like, okay, I feel like I was able to slow it down and not be consumed by it, but I still feel pretty pissed on daily basis, that's then it's a sign there's um, something to work through on a deeper level than just being with it. Because
Mm.
we don't express, we suppress. And by suppressing our anger, we suppress our power as human beings.
Mm.
Because power is on the other side of anger too. So you can fully step into your power
Hmm.
until you get really comfortable and express the anger, if there is any, until you befriend that part of anger
Mm-hmm.
and step into your full power.
Ooh, I believe it. That's fascinating. Yeah, who knew that anger could actually maybe be like a gift and opportunity, like when you look at it a little bit closer, that there could be so much to learn from it and to not hate or shame, that it's an invitation to accessing your power, like you said. Um, so much good stuff there. I would love to ask you another question about your mothering journey that I ask on pretty much every podcast. And take a moment if you need it to think on this. If we really knew you, Ilona, what would we know about your mothering journey? If we really knew you, what would we know?
if you really knew me and my mothering journey, you would know that you would know how much I doubt myself,
Mm,
how hard at times I am on myself, and
mm,
how hard I still work on my own childhood
mm,
while being a mother to my child.
mm,
And to take it even a notch deeper, to maybe support others by me sharing this that might feel that way, is that how at times how much motherhood still activates my inner child.
mm,
And that is something that if you're not aware, I bet it happens for every one of us. And um, everyone deals with it differently. But knowing that if you're not aware of your own triggers, if your level of awareness is not at the point where you can see your own role you play in every situation, it can show up as like, oh, my kid is a disaster. Oh, my husband is like this, or my partner is like
yep.
this. So, for those of you hearing that, if you find yourself in a victim, um, in a lot of victim situations, that, oh, my kid needs to change. They just need to, my kid just horrible kid, and they just need to learn how to do this, or my partner just keeps triggering me with these things. That is a feedback that um, there is some awareness of your own role that would serve you when it's discovered. Because the more
Mm.
awareness you have around your own feelings, because at the end of the day, whatever you're feeling is yours.
It
So
is
it's
a hard truth, but it's true. It's true. I believe. If, yeah, and if you're listening to and you're like, no, like, let's take a moment, let it sink in. See if there could be a little bit of truth to what she just shared, because that might be the first time you've heard that.
And if that doesn't resonate, that's completely fine too. At different uh we're all at the different spots in our lives, and we're ready to hear it. If you told me
Yeah.
about me being a victim when I was 6 months postpartum, I would say fuck off and send you somewhere, and I will never talk to you again, because I'll give you 100 million reasons
Yeah.
why I am the victim, and
Yeah.
everything else in my life is it needs to change for me to feel better.
That is not, yeah, that is not the season to tell a mama when she's like deep in the throes of like really hard shit, whether
Yeah.
it's postpartum or like a loss of some sort. This is, yeah, just
Yeah.
general
So
wisdom. Take what you want, leave the rest.
for
Like,
those of you that are listening, if it's answering you, if it is activating you, if even hearing that message that I just shared is activating, completely fine. There is a gift there for you, and also please take it with the grain of salt for where you are at. Because at the end of the day, I wasn't able to receive that at that time. I would shut you down even further if you told me that.
yeah.
But now my life is completely different, and the work that I'm doing is a result of being in that victim place for so long, or for long enough, and to the point where it became way too painful to continue living in that state. And that's what my intention with sharing it in the bold way that I just did, is not to hurt anybody listening. It's more to wake you up to your power, that what's possible for you when you are ready and when you decide for things to be different.
Hmm.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
still so much reverence and so much tenderness and so much compassion to everyone who maybe potentially just gotten triggered, because um, that is um, a completely it is completely normal to be that way.
Yeah, that was really loving. Thank you for naming that. I have one more question for you. When you consider your mothering journey and just all the wisdom that you've named and not named that you just hold inside you, what stands out as a message that you could share with our listeners? Mm. What do you want the mamas to know?
What keeps coming up, I was checking in with myself if there is anything else.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe it's just me personally. And I wonder if there's anybody else that would relate to it. Maybe if you relate to it, please
Mm-hmm.
share with me. Um, but what I heard when I tuned in was mothering journey, becoming a mother is a divine curriculum to your own evolution and growth, and use everything that comes up in motherhood. I use that for life in general, but if we're narrowing down for motherhood in particular, for your own evolution, because that's how you will serve your kid the most. I have seen so many stories of my friends being adults and seeing their parent to shift their parenting style as they were growing up.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and even even for example, a story where the parent would be harsh and parent would be critical and maybe cold or maybe too controlling, and then the kid is growing up seeing that, how this mother or father is continue doing their own work and shifting and choosing different and becomes a completely different parent, and the bond that it creates and the amount of love that that child has
Mm.
for the parent. And that's what comes through for me when you ask that question, is that no matter how much you think you screw up, as long as you dedicate yourself to your growth as a parent, all relationship are about rupture and repair. And repairing after your failures or after your screw ups or whenever you recognize that you didn't do something right, it's never too late. I love this thing that I picked up. I wish I remember where I got it from, but I know I didn't invent it. It was from a
Can't
book.
take credit. Well, yeah.
As much as I want to, I can't say it just came through me. um, it was this, that the moment you realize you did something off, is go. It's never too soon or too late to go to your child and be like, "Hey, honey, I know I completely overreacted there, or I wasn't kind in that moment, and that's not how I want to speak to you."
Yeah.
And doing that, I think not enough of us of this generation experience that from our kids. I mean, from our parents.
Right. Yeah. Yep.
More, the previous generations, from my understanding and speaking to a lot of people, has been more authoritarian. You do this
Yep.
because
Right.
this,
Mm-hmm.
So even if they do something that deeply hurt us, we never heard sorry. We never seen the vulnerability of our parent being like, you know what, kiddo, I didn't know how to do this with you today. So seeing that is the biggest gift that we can give to our kids,
Mm,
our own humility and vulnerability.
it is such a beautiful thing to model for them. I'm with you. It is very humbling and vulnerable, and it's a sign of strength. And I'm so encouraged that in quite a few conversations I've had in my own mom community, and even watching my husband, like as a male, he models that with our children. And I'm so excited for that because even to this day, like all of our parents or caregivers have wounded us in some way. But if my parents were to genuinely be like, hey, it would be kind of bizarre out of nowhere, but if they were to have done self-reflection and come to me 20 years after an event, that could be so healing. I'm doing that inner work on myself, but I'm like, that I wouldn't shut them down. That would actually be such a gift. So it's never too late. I love that you said that because that could be an invitation for someone listening to repair. Yeah.
Even if it was like a week ago and you did not have awareness of you doing something that potentially wasn't kind. The I do that with my son when I feel like I haven't handled the situation, but how he lights up and I love his innocence. He said, "Oh, like he's just so like he feels the look. He drops everything he's doing and he's so present. He's like, oh, that's okay, mommy. It's okay. The
Don't
innocence.
even, yeah.
Yeah, but I see how he lights up, and our rest of the day is just beautiful always because he just wants to continue to show up for me as
Mhm.
beautiful little kid, and not that he needs to, but I see his cooperation increases.
Yeah. Hmm.
Just the energy completely shifts just because they feel seen and like they matter.
1,000%. It can't go unnoticed how that simple act makes such a big difference, such a big difference.
Mhm.
I feel so like genuinely grateful for this conversation. It was really nourishing to hear all of your wisdom and your heart. And yeah, am so, so grateful that you took the time to share a part of your heart and your mothering story with us. For the women listening who want to connect with you online, and you have a beautiful body of work of things you're doing in the world here in Vegas, maybe virtually, but would you mind telling us how people can connect with you and what you do, if you want, whatever you want to share?
Absolutely. And I always love hearing from listeners what resonated, what stood out. It always sparks very interesting conversations from the previous podcasts that I've been on. So I would really love to hear your story or what was helpful to hear, what felt nourishing. And the best way to connect with me on socials is on Instagram.
Okay. I'll
Uh,
share in
yeah,
the
and
comments.
you wanna love. I know it's a different spelling, so you can grab it when it's available with that link. And if you're curious about how you can live free life from stress, anxiety, lack, and step into feeling abundant, free, and um, know how to manage your stress and create the life that you really desire. You can always connect with me and we'll explore that option if it makes sense for you at that time. And I'm always here to support women. The main tools that I use is coaching, breath work, and somatic work, where we get to do the unconscious reprogramming. Because a lot of the work
Mhm.
out there is on the conscious level. If you want to go deep, if you want to go to the root of things, I'm your girl, and that's they're available for you when you need it.
Such important work. Thank you for what you do and for being here today. It was a treat.
Thank you. It was such a pleasure. Thank you for your beautiful energy. And I want to acknowledge you for the heart that you have to create the community for other mothers so they're not
Oh,
doing alone, and using your powerful voice. And you have a heck of a story as well to inspire so many and to transform the motherhood journey one soul at a time, and being that woman of connection for so many, because I truly believe that with women for so many years there has been so much competition before, but now
yeah.
we all rise by uplifting each other. So it just feels so nourishing to have a soul like you here in Las Vegas that uh, does that for other women
I
and
really
brings
appreciate it.
together.
Yes. Thank you for that acknowledgement. That was super sweet to hear. Thank you all for listening. See you next time. Hey, moms. So, at the time of this recording, it is September of 2024, and I'm in the midst of releasing my first program for moms in 4 years. How crazy is that? 4 years. And I just want to speak to the moms for a moment and say that I know many of you are in these seasons where you have been called to turn inwards and to prioritize your own well being for the sake of you and your family. And one of the huge ways that I've done that is through cultivating stillness and moments of solitude throughout the week, just speaking up my needs over the years, being more willing to voice my needs, advocate for myself, which took a lot of time. And I still do feel some mom guilt towards at times. And also to lean into what matters most to my family and to me to help guide us. And so if you're in a place where you're like, yes, I am doing that, or I want that too, but you feel a little lonely and you would love to be encouraged on by a supportive community, I've got something for you. I created a membership for you, and this program is all for the women who really want a more nourishing relationship with themselves, knowing that this will flow into the way they show up in motherhood. This is for the moms who want to be more deeply connected with their children and to experience less mom guilt. You're going to receive weekly nourishment, care, and love from me. You'll have your own personalized check-in guide you use weekly and monthly that will be really grounding and illuminating of areas in your life that might need to be changed or that you're really killing it in and not even giving yourself credit for. You will be celebrated in this space. Like, how often do we get celebrated? Not often enough, in my opinion. And like I said, you're going to be surrounded by a heart-centered, intentional community of fellow moms with shared goals, full of encouragement. A place where you're going to pause often, develop deeper self-trust, and be supported in living out your deepest values in parenting with your whole heart. You know, one of the things that I have struggled with over the years is self-trust. And I want you to know that it's not about being unwavering and that you're never going to second guess yourself. Like, that's normal. It's so normal. It's more about having this deep inner knowing that no matter what comes your way, no matter what, you are capable of navigating it with integrity and heart. And this program is very much guiding you on a pathway to feel that in your bones, my friends. So that is a superpower in this noisy world, and I would be honored to welcome you into this supportive program for moms. I call it the Heart-Centered Mother Membership, and it will run from October through the end of 2024 in December. Registration is now open. It will close on October 10th, but we do kick off the program officially on the 30th. So I invite you to hop over to my registration page. I'll keep a link in the show notes and learn more. Thank you for being here. Much love to you.